Good morning. Today is Friday, March 10th, 2023. When the Jewish people commit this terrible sin of the Egel Hazav building a golden calf, Moshe immediately begins to pray to God to forgive them. Now, we would expect that such a prayer, in the face of such an overt and clear and terrible sin, that such a prayer would be offered with humility, with begging, with asking for compassion, especially a prayer that comes from Moshe, who the Torah refers to, God himself refers to as Anav Mikol Adam, the most humble of all men. But Moshe's approach to God is exceptionally brazen. Moshe actually delivers to God an ultimatum. Vayashav Moshe el Hashem, vayomar. Moshe, after seeing what the Jewish people did with the golden calf and addressing and rebuking the people for what they did, goes back up to the top of Mount Sinai to entreat God to forgive the Jewish people, and he says to God, Ana, God, please understand, Chataham hazeh chatah gedolah. This people has done a grievous sin, a terrible sin. Vayasu lehem Elohei zahav. They made for themselves a god of gold. A terrible, terrible sin. But listen to what Moshe says next. Viata, and now God, listen to me very carefully. Im tisoch chatasam, please forgive their sin. V'im ayin, because if you won't forgive their sin, macheni nami sifracha asher kosavta, take me out of the book. I want you to erase every instance of my name in the entire Torah, remove from me from the book. If you don't listen to me, if you don't do what I'm demanding, take me out. I'm not here anymore. Wow. I mean, first of all, how do you say that to God? How do you speak to God in such a manner? I demand, and you must, and here's what you must do if you don't listen to me. I mean, it's pretty astounding. It would be pretty astounding coming from anybody, but from Moshe, Anav Mikol Adam, the most humble of people, to speak to God in this way. And then we get to Rashi, and Rashi's comment is even more bizarre, even more difficult to understand, especially coming from Moshe. Listen to what Rashi explains as the motive, the reason for Moshe to issue this ultimatum to God. Moshe says to God, either forgive the Jewish people or take my name out of the book. Shelo yomru alai, so that in the future people will not say about me, Moshe, shelo hoyisi kedai levake shaloi rachamim, that Moshe was not worthy to pray for mercy. That's why God didn't listen to him. Come on. I mean, now this is about Moshe's ego. You have to forgive them, God, because if you don't, I'm going to look bad. People are going to say about me I wasn't worthy. I mean, again, Moshe is Anav Mikol Ha'adam, the most humble of all men. And he's worried that he's going to look bad if he doesn't succeed in gaining forgiveness for the Jewish people? If God doesn't submit to his demand to forgive the people for the terrible sin of the golden calf, Moshe is going to look bad? That's what he's worried about? I heard this insight from Rabbi Meilech Biderman, and it should inspire every single one of us. An incredible insight. Moshe was Anav Mikol Hadam, the most humble of men. Moshe considered himself unworthy of praying for forgiveness from the Jewish people. Obviously, we would disagree. I'm sure we could think of no one as worthy to pray on our behalf as Moshe. But Moshe did not consider himself worthy. And precisely for this reason, precisely because of his great humility, because he considered himself unworthy to this task of praying for forgiveness for the Jewish people, Moshe cried out to God, if you don't accept my prayer, people will say, well, of course. People will say, well, of course God didn't forgive the Jewish people, because the one who was praying for them, was Moshe, who was unworthy. Again, that's what Moshe said that people would say. And people will say, well, God didn't forgive the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf because the one praying for them was Moshe, who was not worthy, because had there been someone praying for the Jewish people who was more worthy, then maybe God would have responded. Because the plea came from Moshe, who was unworthy. Had the plea come from someone greater, God would have granted the request. Because, according to this line of thinking, God only answers the prayers of a truly worthy person. Not just anyone. That's what people would have said Moshe claims. If God does not accept Moshe's unworthy prayer, people would say, because God only accepts prayers from certain people. And that is dangerously false. A person should never think that. So Moshe says to God, because I am unworthy, you must accept my prayer. You hear the irony there. Because I am unworthy, you must accept my prayer, to demonstrate that God cherishes and responds to every prayer of every person, regardless of merit or worthiness. And Moshe says, and if you will not do that, God, if for whatever reason you will not accept my prayer, then it would be better, Macheni nami sifracha, take me out of the book, remove me entirely. Because if you leave me in and you did not accept my prayer because I was unworthy, people will think, they'll get the wrong idea. And they will think, God forbid, that God does not accept the prayers of people who have made mistakes. God forbid. That's the worst error we could possibly make. Every one of us must know with certainty that every time we sincerely approach God in prayer, God accepts and cherishes our prayer, whoever we are, whatever we have done. Shelo Yomru, don't ever say, Moshe is teaching us, don't ever say, Lo hayisi kedai levakish rachmim, I'm not worthy to ask God for compassion, for mercy, for forgiveness. Don't ever say that. You are kedai. You are worthy. Whoever you are, whatever you have done, God is waiting to hear from you. My friends, I want to wish you a great day and a beautiful Shabbos. And I look forward to seeing you soon in person.